Welcome to the Zentry Trusted Access Admin Portal demo. In this video, we're going to show you some of the things admins get access to and what they can configure. In this video, we're using our centralized cloud-based admin portal that's my.zentry.ai. This system is already deployed, so we already have a site set up and resource connector, but I will have a video that gives an overview of how to configure some of the stuff. But it just takes a few minutes to go from tenant to first user login. So let's get started. Right when an admin logs in, the first thing they see is the dashboard. And dashboard gives you information about active users. Right now, no one's really logged in. But it also gives you information about the number of unique users, unique IPs. And there's a few other widgets that can be added. I've added the ones I use often. Here we can see browsers that are being used. These are from the end user perspective. We also have a few features that we'll talk about just based on the information in the dashboard. So the first one is anomalies. You can have some anomalies configured, and right now these are the anomalies being detected. We don't have any responses configured, but this just gives an admin a good idea of what's going on with the system. So the ones we have configured are day of week, time of day, and then location anomalies is kind of on by default. I'll just show you how to configure some of this stuff in a little bit. But we have the day of week, time of day set as weekend so that we can show some of the stuff. From a location perspective, we can see that there are 3 instances of locations changing. If we go down to this widget, you can see that we have users in the US, where our headquarters is. We have users in India, and then there's a few other countries where users are logging in from. As the location changes for a user, a anomaly is detected. We also have top resources right now. Since for demo purposes, I only have one resource. That's the only one that shows up. But as we add more resources, they'll be listed. These resources can be something like an RDP session. It could be a web link. It could be an external like SaaS application. We'll talk about those in a minute. There's also some information about logged failures or login failures, successful logins, and so on. So this just gives you a high overview of what's going on. You can do a search per user if you're trying to get some stats on a particular user and various different time frames. To get more detailed information, you can go and look at logging. And logging is, of course, searchable. You can filter on any of these. Again, there's a way to narrow it down based on the time frame you're looking for. And you can also download some of this information. We also have a log of anomalies. As I mentioned, the login day, login time, and current location. To configure the business hours, you would go to settings, then business hour configurations, and here you'd select what days are considered business hours, and then your time. Here I have 9 to 5, just kind of a default information, and anything outside of this gets logged. In terms of system information, there's also a way to get audit logs here, but this is more for kind of the system. A lot of this information is also found in the logging. Now, from a configuration perspective, all the configuration starts with the site deployment. In this case, the site is something that we host in our cloud, but there is a component called the resource connector that needs to be deployed. And I'll talk more about this in the solution overview video. But right now we have a resource connector deployed on ESXi in our lab. And that's going to give us access to like internal applications. It's going to give us access to our LDAP server. And that process of deploying the resource connector is just a few minutes. So once you have everything a site up and running, you would go and configure authentication. We do have support for various authentication servers. With what we have now, we can support almost all enterprise use cases. There's a way to configure things like sessions per portal and so on. You can also turn on things like single sign-on and transient authentication. Um, Once you have the who configured through all the authentication, these are all who can actually authenticate. Then you would go and configure resources. Again, there's a few different resources we support: SSH, Telnet, RDP, and within RDP we can do applications. So just specific remote applications, not their whole desktop. VNC and then web, either internal web links, external web links. Once you have the resources configured, you would go and create the policy, and the policy is pretty flexible. So I'm going to just add an example. So here we can create a whitelisted or blacklisted set of rules. The rules can be based on a few different things, like information we pull from the browser or information we pull from like LDAP. I'm going to just create a simple one. Username is equal to, let's say, Ash. I'm going to say add that, and then we can say, let's say source IP, I'm coming from just some made up network. I want to show you this condition. So we can add a set of rules that are ands, and then if I add another rule, it would add another line, and that would be an or. So once you configure the rule of who can actually log in, then you would go and you would add resources. In this case, we only have a single resource. There's a concept of tags, which are tied to resources, that makes searching a lot easier. Or you can say all resources that have this particular tag, add that. So once we add that, you can also create conditions for each particular resource. Let's say your rules are very broad, but there are very specific resources that you want to make available or not available for particular users or groups. You can come in and add a condition per resource. I'm not going to save that because we already have a policy here. And this policy, in this one, it's very specific. It says if the username is Asher, or if the group that we get from LDAP is IT, we'll give them access to this particular rule. We don't have any conditions for this resource. So now you have the who can log in, what they can log into, and then the policy. You would take that policy, assign it to your site, and then the authentication server and assign it to your site. So now we know who can log in to where, and once they log in, what are they authorized to use. Okay, so it's pretty simple. We've we've had deployments that from tenant creation to first end user login has been around under an hour. Some of them closer to 30-40 minutes. So it's really simple to use. There's also some advanced functionality that we hide because we're trying to make this as a Zen experience as we can. Thank you for your time. To learn more or see a demo, please visit zentrysecurity.com.